financing and investors? Like, how did that kind of play a role in the due diligence phase?
Yeah, so during the due diligence phase, like if you were to start from the beginning, you've got like the engineering stuff that we talked about already, but then you've also got, you know, and in my mind, this being the first resort development, I was talking to people about investors before we found the property, which was just wishful thinking, really. But really, I was finding people who may be interested in investing in a piece of land. And the reality is that until you have a piece of land, you can't really go after investors, right?
Yeah.
And when I say go after investors, I mean we. This is like friends and family who bought into this and are partners in this, and so the civil engineering alongside with the lender and the investment partners, kind of it's all happening during that due diligence time frame.
What would you say are your lessons and how you like if you could go back and do it differently, how would you do it differently?
Um, well, I really like the civil engineers I'm working with, but I would have worked with just a septic designer and someone who could carry me all the way from the doing the test pits, the digging the test pits at the very beginning during the due diligence, all the way through to designing the septic system, the soil testing. Um,
Why would that be?
it's kind of like I think it would have shortened the process by about 3 months, really, and probably would end up costing less because we did the soil borings, we paid for that up front, and then we went ahead and dug test pits. So we basically paid for it twice for the soil, for looking at the soil.
Yeah, and a little less of a headache.
Yeah, I mean we dug 30 test pits in this place. It was just ridiculous, and we had to
There
clear
were
brush
holes
for
everywhere.
days just to get to the point of acceptance. So
um,
that was a big lesson learned, and yeah, I'll probably think of some other ones.
do you want to talk about the business plan?
Like in what regard?
I don't know. You just have step zero: developing business plan, deal structure, site design.
Yeah, well, the business plan.
Oh, you know what? That was actually, I didn't realize you had different videos split up. Video
Uh,
2, video 3, video 4.
Deal structure is important, though. I can talk briefly about that. I mean, it's part of the business plan, and it's part of getting investors on board and making sure this thing makes sense, right? Like, I took a pro forma, like a financial pro forma from the hospitality world, so it was like a hotel pro forma, just to plug in all my numbers. So plugging in, all right, we need this many cabins, this many glamping tents, um, other stuff like events. So basically, like, where does all the revenue come from? And then what are all of our costs? Obviously, land purchase, big one. Um, Infrastructure, so like all your underground utilities, septic, roads, those are all huge costs. And trying to identify what those costs would be within the due diligence window, because ultimately, like, and that's why having this whole thing teed up before you actually find your property was really cool. Um, because I was able to bring my guy here, and he's like, okay, 200 grand for roads, or whatever the number is, and then roads and grading, I think it was. But you want to get a budget for those big numbers because when you're structuring this deal, the bank needs to know how much it's going to cost roughly, and then how much do the cabins cost? How much?
Yeah, so
You know,
break it all down before you even
break
like
it all down.
go to the
Yep.
goal.
Yep. And then what's your average daily rate? What's your occupancy expectations? A whole bunch of other little variables, right? But ultimately, you want to get to what is the internal rate of return for a
Yeah.
project like this. Ours is like 20 something, which is great. And that's the number one thing that the investors are going to look for. And the bank too. I mean, the bank they want to know that you've done your homework, that you've
Yeah.
ran your own numbers, and they need to look at your numbers and sniff them out. And probably the appraiser is doing the same thing. So, and then deal structure is like, how much of this thing am I willing to give away to partners? Which in our case, we found people that were just like passionate about this, and it's a very fair investment and return for everybody. So they're making 10% on their initial investment, and then will own, there's different levels, but they'll own part of this. They do own it right now, and so they'll get X% of the profits. And then every time we refinance it or restructure the loan or take dividends, they get dividends on top of that too. So it's really good for everybody down the line, like long term. Um, and people get to be part of something really cool without a lot of risk. They're just a part owner, and what we did was we kept every part owner under 20% ownership, and that's important because the bank will start to look at all of their financials if they're over 20% of an owner.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody's watching this video and they're like, this guy really knows what he's talking about. Are you open to consulting like other people?
Oh, for sure. I mean, again, I've learned so much on this, and I had 2 mentors, right? So, and they're great guys, but specific to resorts and outdoor resorts, like I would be happy to coach people, mentor people, just because, again, like it can be super stressful.
Yeah.
And you can waste time and money,
That was something you were looking for.
Yeah.
Also, and you couldn't really find anyone.
Well, I mean, Jim's great because he helped me think about the overall picture of what this place is. He challenged me a lot.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for that. And then Matt was great in the details. The trouble is I didn't know the questions to ask. They probably would have answered any questions I had.
Yeah.
And helped save me time and money and everything.
What's like one question that you wish that you had known to ask that would have?
I think again it goes back to septic. I'm like,
yeah, that septic was not your friend.
No, and the other part of the engineering is anytime you disturb more than 1 acre, you have a state soil and sedimentation runoff plan. Basically, is what it is. So it's like, how are we gonna stop sediments and construction debris and all that stuff going in our waterways? Where we are is all over.
Yeah.
But you have to do that everywhere. So I would have gotten way ahead of both of those things. And I really would have tried to understand the step by step, what to do now, instead of, oh, I have to do that, because the surprises aren't nearly as fun. And yeah, again, sometimes I feel like I wasted 4 weeks by not knowing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I think we'll share more videos.
Yeah, because I'd like to deep dive into a couple other things that I have down there.
Yeah.
What were some of the other deep dive ideas that we had?
We are going to talk about, let's see, a little bit more about developing a business plan, septic roadmap, conscious land development.
Yeah, conscious land development is important to me, and I think doing these kinds of projects, being that it's a customer-driven kind of project, I think it's important.
Yeah.
It's more important to people now, more so than ever. So.
And your favorite, structure design, sustainability, and placement.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're having a blast designing really cool, unique structures here.
Yeah, it's really fun.
And I think part of that is what we were talking about the other day, which is themed design.
Yeah.
And like extraordinary stuff that you don't see everywhere.
It's like the icing on the top.
Yeah. So we'll get into that